Well, hello everybody. I'm Ed Parcaut. I'm here with Amy Tiemeyer. Yeah, I know she's on the left and I'm actually talking, but it should be her.
I don't know why he says that. He talks just fine.
No, on the left is the person who's in charge of is how it's supposed to be. Did you not know that?
I did not know that.
So yeah, usually the host is the one that's like on the left who's running the shows and stuff for people, and then the guest is on the right. I'm not saying you're a guest; we're both the same, but that's just you made me do all the work. So,
Well, it's more fun that way.
so how you been? It's been last week we didn't have a show. You have a good Fourth?
I did have a good fourth. It was family and just kind of chill the whole week. How about you?
Yeah, it was a great time. It was cooler those days. The weekend was 106, 105, and then I think it was only 95 that day. So,
Very good.
all right, you know who our guest is today?
I just met him, so I was asking him how he.
So then you know him more than me. So you can bring.
Okay.
I'm just saying, yeah, I'm gonna let you bring him in. Okay, I'll bring him in. You do the talking real quick.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep. So,
Hello, William.
sorry.
Oh, I prefer you call me Bill. That would be better.
Okay, well, I just see
Less
William.
formal.
Yeah,
Less formal.
Yeah, I used to be Edward on everything, so that when you called and asked for Edward, I knew you didn't know me.
So my family has the same, but my maiden name was really hard, and so everybody got it wrong, and that's how we knew you didn't know us.
I understand that.
So Bill is a U.S. Army veteran, which always makes me happy. Go Army, beat Navy.
You
But
can
we
keep
always
trying.
Pardon me?
You can keep trying. We still have the best records still. So.
Well, anyhow.
By the way, my son's Army airborne medic. He's in Washington State now, so I have Army in the family. So
cool.
So we always ask why you chose the service you chose.
Probably because my dad, both my grandfathers, all of my uncles were in the Army at various times from World War I, World War II, and Korea. And so I was associated with them, heard some of their stories to the extent they talked about it, which was not very much at all. But it did have an influence on me, I think.
So did you go enlisted or officer?
I was in college, and if this was in '69, the draft was on, and I got my draft notice. I did have time to finish a master's degree, but I got my draft notice, and it was to report for induction down in my hometown, which was 250 miles south of Atlanta, where I was at the time. So the day before I was to report, I just went to the induction center in Atlanta and joined and expressed my desire to become an officer. And so I got set in the program where I would go through basic training, advanced individual training, then OCS. And I was commissioned a second lieutenant. And then I ended up not going to Vietnam, which was what all my training was for, but they sent me to Germany, which was a very good experience.
Yeah, people say that'd be much better than Vietnam. My dad was in Vietnam. My uncle was in Vietnam. I lost my dad to hairy cell leukemia from Vietnam. He worked on the planes over there, and all the Agent Orange stuff.
Yeah. That was rough. Agent Orange really did a job on quite a number of people, some of whom I knew.
Yeah. They say there's only two things: it either kills you, or slowly, of course, or it doesn't affect you at all. So. And how they tested it on some of the Army people, it's just unbelievable. They would spray them in the fields and So it's perfectly fine. They're wearing raincoats. It doesn't bother them at all.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, I just had to bring it up.
Yeah.
What did you do as an officer? What type of officer? Like infantry or?
Well, it was really an interesting twist because in '69, early '70, the Vietnam War was starting to wind down. And as I said, all of my training had been as a combat engineer. And I was trained at Fort Belvoir as an engineer officer. But when my class was ready to graduate, they announced that we really don't need any more engineer officers in Vietnam. the few of you that have engineering degrees will make you engineering officers, but the rest of you, what would you like to go into? And so it was just it kind of surprised me, but I knew after the military I wanted to get into the business world in some form or fashion, so I chose the quartermaster corps. So following that, they sent me to the finance school at Fort Benjamin Harrison, and then to a logistics school at Fort Lee, Virginia, and then shipped me off to be a platoon leader at a facility in just outside Nuremberg, Germany. And so that's how I ended up doing that, and it really worked out well over the long term. I mean, it really did.
That's exciting. And were you surprised by anything that you learned in the military?
I was surprised by all of it, but it was all it's hard in a short little conversation like this to give you all of the emotional responses I had to the military, up, down, sideways, good and bad. But overall, I thought it was a fabulous experience. I am so glad that I went through that. And when I talk to people today that have not been through what we went through, I feel like they kind of miss something. I really do.
I totally agree. While you're in, you don't really like it usually, right? You're like, this is not that. And then you look back once you get out and go, that was really a good time overall.
Well, it at first in basic training, it's like I think you've said before, and that is it's a pretty wild, weird, surreal experience. And you think crazy people are in charge of you, and you wonder if you're going to live through it. And then when you finally get through it, you realize there was a real point to it all. It had a purpose, and it did prepare us quite well for the things that followed. After all of the training, though, the serving as an officer in the regular Army, so to speak, after basic and AIT, it was in OCS. It was really a rewarding experience, and I think having gone through basic training with all the horrors of that, which, as I said, had a purpose actually. I was living with and working with people from all walks of life. I mean, people that had GEDs to people that had PhDs. It was all over the map, different parts of the country, just everything. And so I learned how to get along with people from all walks of life. And that really helped me later as I became an officer, because a lot of those folks were reporting to me. And I had a better understanding of what their hopes, dreams, goals were, because I'd actually lived with them and understood that. And I think that helped me perform my job in a much better way. And then post-military, all of that paid off as well, because, well, I can get into that story in a few minutes if you like, but
yeah, that's fine.
Right now for a minute.
Yeah, we like to have a conversation usually. The one thing looking back, you were saying how I lost my train of thought for a second there, but the boot camp, because today's boot camp is totally different than your boot camp or even my boot camp. Because after your guys's, when I went in the late 80s, it was not as hard as it was in the 70s or the 60s, and now my son went through it, and I was there going, this is just not, how are you supposed to run a military the way they do boot camp now? I don't know if you've been there or seen it. It's they have timeouts. They can I gotta have a timeout.
Oh, you're kidding.
No.
No. Their idea was to feed us as little as possible to sustain life, and to give us only enough sleep that we could stay marginally functional, and then scream at us the rest of the time.
Yeah.
That was pretty much.
Yeah. And if you can get through that, you can get through anything.
Exactly. And that was one of the points. They really taught us that you can do a lot more than you think you can. And they proved it to us by making us do things that we didn't think we could actually do.
Right. I mean, in the past, they went a little too far, but that's in everything. But overall, you need to see what you're able to do, so you know how you can push through when you need to, especially if you're actually in the real military.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Amy, anything else there?
Not anything there. I guess you want to ask your favorite question?
Which is what did you give up once you got out of the military? I gave up the 24-hour clock.
You know,
You're
I'm not
laughing, but I was in the medical field, so it was like constantly, and they still use it today. And my wife uses it, and I prefer 2 o'clock. I know
no,
when I'm talking.
I've been in positions where sometimes I've used it still. I'm not sure I really gave up much when I left the military. So many of the lessons that I learned, the experiences that I had, really stuck with me and helped me. I've heard people talk about today, oh, I don't really want to go in the military. It'll set me back on my career path. It'll be like a time away from life, and I'll have to start behind my contemporaries. I had the opposite experience. After I got out, if you'd like for me to say a word about that.
Yeah.
When I
Please.
got out and was going to reenter civilian life, I was in Virginia, and I applied for several places, but one that piqued my interest, I didn't really know what it was about. It was at Madison College. It's now James Madison University, and they had a position available that I misunderstood totally, but I showed up. I was absolutely had no experience for the job that I went in to apply for. But it turned out that the person doing the hiring official, was a retired military officer, a colonel. And when he heard that I just mustered out of the military, he wanted to talk with me about my experience. So that conversation led to him then offering me a chance to be interviewed. And I ended up getting a job. My first job was a director of housing. I didn't know exactly what that would entail, but I was confident I could pull it off, make it work. And I did, and ended up working my way up at 3 different universities. I was a vice president and chief financial officer and a whole bunch of things that I don't think any of that would have really happened except that very beginning where the person interviewing me for my first post-military job was a veteran, and he wanted to talk to me about my experience. And that conversation led to an interview, then a job, and so forth. If I'd not gone in the military, I don't think I would have gotten that job. My career path would have been different. And I know I would not have done any better than I did. I think I might have done not as well without the military experience as a springboard.
Myself personally, I wouldn't done anything differently, because I use to this day standard operating procedures. We create that stuff, which most people have no idea what we're talking about, but I find that most veterans are amazing business owners, and because their attention to detail that we learn by making beds and stuff, that you're like, why am I doing this? This is the reason. And you do it where a lot of these same people, your age range, are not as advanced as you are when you get out. That's my take on it.
No, I agree. I think too, one of the things we learn very, very quickly is that if it can go wrong, it will. And that's not a big surprise when things start to go south. So the mindset is, okay, how do I solve this? How do I achieve the objective, even though the plan has gone sideways on me? And I always looked at it as a challenge. I thought it was really interesting to solve those things. And I felt really good when we achieved some success after having things not go according to plan A. In fact, I always tell people, always have a plan B, hopefully a plan C and D, because plan A, the perfect plan, usually doesn't pan out completely. You need one, but you need to know it's going to evolve. And the military helps learn that.
I agree. Amy?
I agree too. Yeah, no.
I'm not looking for you to agree. I'm just on your next question. I don't want to keep asking questions and not let you in.
Well, because I do events with the nonprofits that I volunteer with, I always have a plan A, B, and C at least.
Good. Yes.
Because it's anything with people, I feel, rarely goes as planned. And you can be much calmer at the helm if you have contingency plans. It's way more stressful if your one plan was your only plan.
You mentioned something, being calmer. That reminds me of a guy that I worked with that several years while I was at James Madison. it was a retired gunnery sergeant that worked for me that he was really kind of a pain when things were calm and peaceful. I think he was bored. But then when we'd have an emergency, something really went wrong. He was the one that I wanted to be with me because his whole demeanor changed. It became calm, collected. He uh, formulated a response just on the spot and gave instructions to our people that were clear, concise, and we would work through things. And so I know his military experience is what gave him that ability to do those kind of things.
Yeah. So I know that since we've gotten out, they've gone through a lot of programs to help people transition. Did they do anything for you when you transitioned out? Or
No,
just for your service? Here's
no,
your 14.
no, it's just, a mug and some plaques and things like that. That's about it. But I don't have any resentment or regrets about that. I never expected anything more. One of the things that's concerned me recently, though, is listening to the stories about the problems in recruiting for the military last year and this year, the not meeting the quotas. That's disturbing. And I think part of it, I've heard different aspects of why that's what it is, but I think part of it is a lot of young people don't really understand what an experience in the military provides. They just they don't get it. And, I'd love to be a part of trying to tell that story sometime to different people because it certainly benefited me. And I know it's benefited a lot of other people.
I want to get into your business thing in a second, but I want to go with what you just said there. They're actually, what I heard is a lot of veterans are telling their kids not to go in the military because of how they're recruiting and how they're changing things. It's so normally all of us veterans would go in the military. I had a good time. It's those families who are telling their people not to go in.
Well, I do know I just had a staff meeting with the Travis Manion Foundation today, and Ryan Manion, she talked about, she did a spot on the news recently about this and what she would like, because our goal is to get veterans and families that have fallen involved in their communities. And she is hoping that will help. We are not recruiters whatsoever, but it'll still help kids to understand and see the opportunities within serving our country and all the different opportunities. I mean, now we have the Space Force, there's just so much to it.
Right.
The medical field is amazing. What a medic can do is so much more in the military world than they do in the civilian world. We've had a gentleman who passed his nursing, but never went to traditional school, but he has a nursing license. And all the things that he's been able to do and see in the military is quite extraordinary.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. If it's okay, I'd like to go back to something that Ed said about, you didn't really say it, but you were alluding to how some of the politics of today's world are getting into the military and people are discouraged or saying how bad that is and so forth. Well, the military is not unique in that respect. That's something that's permeated organizations all across the country. And as a leader, you're going to be faced with those situations wherever you go, whether it's the military or someplace else. And I think I believe if you're a really good leader, you're going to go into whatever the situation is, and you're going to work to make it work better, to improve things, and to achieve the objectives that you're challenged with to meet the organization's goals. So to say that the military is subject to this, that, or the other, it's not really that different in corporations across the country right now. So I would just discount that as an argument not to do it, unless you're not going to be a leader anywhere.
And I've looked at everything in the past. I've watched older shows, and everybody complained about the government and what they've done for years. So I'm talking all the way back to 1910. So it's not changed. It's just a different time period. Everybody complains about certain things. During the Vietnam War, there was other problems. When our people came back, they had a lot of people didn't like the war, didn't like what was going on. And so what I'm getting at is you just need to focus on what you want to do in life and not worry about what everybody else is saying, kind of what you're saying to do.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think even in recruiting command, making sure to do recruiting well, like take the time and mentor the kids around you that you want to go in. I don't know if there was ever a time where it was easy, maybe right after 9/11. But we need, what does it say? TMF says 1 in 3 kids feel like they don't have an adult mentor.
Yeah. In a way, we're all mentors, whether we realize it or not. And as you get into leadership positions, people watch what you do. And if you're successful, they will a lot of times emulate your behavior. So if you were successful because you walked all over people and were a pretty mean person and fought your way to the top and you got there like that, people are going to say, well, that must be how it's done. And they'll copy that. But if you're then a leader who cares for your people and you take care of them and you help them advance in their careers and that sort of thing, people see that. And then that's a behavior that people will emulate in their career path. So again, we're all mentors, whether we really realize it or not. And the higher up you go in a hierarchy, the more you are watched and the more your behaviors are noticed and sometimes rejected, sometimes copied. But it's important to know that.
I agree. All right, you want to talk about his business now?
Yeah. What are you doing now?
What am I doing now? Well, I've finished my career in higher ed. That was 40, I don't remember now, 47 years, something like that at 3 different universities. And I really enjoyed that. And so now I've been writing and I've got a couple of books published. One on So You Want to Be a Leader is the title of it. And it's almost like a how-to book on being a leader in different large organizations. And I have a few of my military experiences that I reference in there, as well as all the other things that I've done. Then I wrote another one on finding a philosophy of life, which is almost a corollary in a way. It's encouraging people that read it to think about all of the life experiences that impacted who they are later in life. And that's why I called it breadcrumbs, going back and looking at the different significant events in your life and thinking about how it shaped how you see the world. And it helps if you begin to understand why you see things the way you do, and you understand how those experiences that you had shaped that. I believe it helps you understand and be more empathetic to other people who don't see the world quite the way you do. But when you realize they had a totally different set of experiences in their life that led them to where they are, you can at least understand it better. And you don't just reject out of hand. You don't necessarily have to agree with them, but you give them at least credit for being different than you are and having reasons for that difference. So anyway, and now the third thing, I'm writing one right now. I'm almost finished with it. Believe it or not, it's a science fiction novel. Gets into some time travel and a bunch of stuff like that. And I work in adventure and romance and all those sorts of things into it. So I think it's going to be pretty good. But I do, again, going back to the first 2 books, So You Want to Be a Leader and thinking about what makes you who you are in life, I weave some of those things into the fictional story too, to round out my characters and look at why they're doing what they're doing in the story. So I've been having a lot of fun with writing.
Do you self-publish?
Yes, I went through, when you're an unknown author, which I certainly have been, getting an agent, the first thing is funny to me. The first thing when I talked to one, the first thing they asked us, well, what's your platform? And I thought to myself, what's a platform? I didn't even know what they were talking about. So that's how far down the curve I was in terms of being able to get out there. So I had some friends that are in the business though, and they suggested in the beginning that self-publishing might be better, because since I was an unknown author, it would be better if I managed things myself, as opposed to getting an agent that was not so good that would take on an unknown author and try to push it through. And anyway, I've been happy with that route.
Very good.
And my books are available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all those places.
Yeah, I self-published myself just because it was, and it's through Amazon too. So I totally understand that side. And plus, you own it. The difference is if you publish through certain companies, you don't own it anymore. They own the rights to it. You can't even quote it.
That really bothered me, the idea that would happen. In fact, I've had some requests to do magazine articles where they wanted to own the material that I wrote, and I couldn't reuse it in some other way. And I've just said no to that kind of thing. I don't want to have to always be thinking about, well, did I say this in an article where I said I wouldn't use it for somebody else and all that kind of stuff? I mean, these are my stories, my life, my experiences, my writing, and I want to control it and own it. And
you don't want to be like Kramer. Remember that? You guys don't remember Seinfeld?
I remember Kramer, but I'm trying to remember.
He sold his life story to the guy that owned that Elaine worked for. Because he wanted to write a big biography about himself, and he didn't have any stories, so he's got Kramer stories, and then Kramer was, I can't even talk about it anymore, just like you were talking about.
Yeah, right. Oh,
no. You don't realize what you do, what they when you sell it, it's gone.
Yeah, that bothers me. I don't want to do that. I really don't. I really appreciate what you two are doing, though, with your podcast and helping people that are transitioning from the military into civilian life. I know in my past, I've hired people that were just out of the military, and some I didn't hire that were just out of the military, and I have talked to people about different things about why some people get hired over others, and there's a whole art form in that too, I think. So I know you're helping people understand some of that.
We're trying, there's just so many silos out there that we're trying to get together. Like my big push this year through my Rotary, we were talking about beforehand that I'm the president of my Rotary, is, helping with the veteran suicide in our area and other stuff, because it's such a huge thing. And I didn't realize, I knew it was bad because I've seen everything, but when I was researching it one day a couple of weeks ago and I wasn't going to do it on radio. I was just researching it for my first day. And I was shocked by all the numbers, so much so that the whole hour of radio I did live that week, which is not my normal radio show, that's all I talked about, because it was so much more than I thought it was,
Yeah. I think they said, was it loneliness and suicide are almost at epidemic levels? I heard somewhere. And I think, just all of it.
The pandemic was really hurtful to a number of people. I know in my personal life, socialization almost went to zero for a while there. And that's not a good thing. It's really not.
Yeah. I mean, it affected my son when he was in Alaska, when he first got to duty station. You're airborne medic, just jumping out of planes, and then you get to your first duty station, you're locked in a barracks for weeks on end. The suicide rate for new recruits was through the roof.
Oh gosh, that's terrible. That is terrible. I hope we're slowly getting past that. It's done a job on a lot of the really young people. So.
38 and below have the 2.5 times more likely to commit suicide. Wow. I'm full of numbers now.
On another note, what do you think about the physical fitness of the recruits coming in the military now?
I think it's not just the recruits. I was listening to something because I live real close to Joint Base Lewis McChord up in Washington State.
Yeah, I've been there.
So I get a lot of invites to all sorts of different activities, and just the soldiers right now are bigger than ever, and so their physical fitness is different. Part of me understands, like the physical fitness test is there's one for non-combat and one for combat. And I don't know,
I didn't have that. It was all the same.
right, same here.
Yeah.
But I also, I think it's interesting, just all of it. So when we've asked different people like why they joined the service they did, we had a female veteran a couple months ago. She talked about when she went to the Air Force recruiters and she was told that she was too fat. And she said, I had never thought I was fat a day in my life. And she goes to the Army recruiter, and the Army recruiter, she made weight. And here's the funny thing for me, I struggled with weight in the Army. I never made weight, always had to be taped, always made my tape. When I got out, the reason why I went in the Navy Reserves is because I could weigh 30 pounds more. So after having 2 kids, I just made weight. But I didn't understand like why the difference. The Air Force said back then that the reason why is they wanted people who were already skinny and fit because they weren't going to make them do the physical things to make them lose weight. So they needed to come in at that optimal size. And so it's an interesting thing because I think recruits, yes, because we as a nation are big,
Yep,
bigger than we ever have been.
Yeah.
So just as a part of it.
and Air Force is up to a 28 BPI now or whatever that. I mean, huge. You can be, and it's like, okay, that's a lot to begin with, and I think people are heavier now because they're not getting kicked out. They can't make their recruitment. Why would they get rid of somebody?
Yeah. I see that. If you go back to the 1900s, say, well, the United States was an agrarian society. We were probably, almost 90%. Everybody lived on farms or worked farms and all that sort of stuff. And then the Industrial Revolution started moving things forward, people working in the factories. But the factories early on weren't really automated, so a lot of manual labor and that sort of thing. So people were just naturally more fit because their daily activities required a lot of manual labor. So with their time of recruitment, 18 years old, 19, 20, somewhere in there, they were usually in pretty decent shape. I think after World War II, that started to decline because a lot of the jobs were no longer on the farm. They weren't quite as physical as before, and that's been a trend. And so it's hard to get people to be physically fit if their whole younger years weren't involved in that sort of thing. I don't know. It's just it's a problem that's endemic to the whole society. I'm not sure I would call it a problem, just in normal terms, but in terms of recruiting for the military, where you want physically fit people, that's where it becomes a problem, I think.
I agree. I just don't know what. There's a lot of issues that the military has right now, getting people and everything else. I don't know how we're going to fix that. So.
Well, if I can help, I certainly would like to. I mean, I think I know my military experience helped me tremendously. My mother-in-law lived with us for 14 years. She passed away in August. She was 102. She was a WAC in World War II. And she talked about that as being a highlight of her life, being in the military during World War II. It can be a really good experience for people. And she didn't say it was easy. No. It was,
especially being a woman at that time.
Right.
Yeah. Bill, anything else you want to, when you're looking back, anything you would change in your whole career? Anything you would do differently?
No, not really. I thought about that, and I've been asked that question before. And I really do believe that we all learn from our experiences, the good ones and the bad ones. And some of the things that happened to me that were not good, they just weren't good. It had an impact on me, and it helped me move forward in my life and grow as a human being. So with that in mind, that's why I say, no, I wouldn't change anything. Because if I took some of the bad experiences out, I'm not sure that would have helped me grow. I need both. Yeah, I think we need both. So no, I wouldn't change anything.
And again, the books that you have, they're on Amazon, and what were the names of them?
So You Want to Be a Leader is one.
Okay.
And the other is,
and it's under your full name?
yes, that's why I put it on there. It's my full name. Breadcrumbs is the other one. And I talk a lot about childhood experiences and how they impact our view of the world as we progress, and then how we can recalibrate our views based on the experiences we have later when we apply reason to them and that sort of thing.
All right. Bill, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your story. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate
Amy,
you having me.
else?
I've enjoyed talking with you. I really do, and I appreciate what you do. I think both of you, I think you're doing a really good thing. Thank you.
Well, if you know anybody else, we'd send them our way. We'd like to get them on, tell their story.
Okay.
Yeah, we appreciate it, because people like you help us grow this. We're only 2, but with you was 1 more, and you can send a few more our way.
All right, I'll do it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Amy, thanks for being here today. Thanks for setting it up. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Always.
I'll take us out, so don't worry about it. I don't want you to cut me off as I'm talking. And again, if you like what we do here, the best way to support us is subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that is Helping the Brave. And so go over there and subscribe, and we really appreciate it. And thank you so much for being here, and thank you for watching. And Bill, thank you again for being here, and you too, Amy. Make it a great day.